we're going to have joining me our guest, MVP and Stack Overflow moderator and general good author as well, because you've got a few books as well out. Is it 4 now? I forget how many you got.
4.
4. There you go. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't say, is it 5 now? Because then you have to go, no, I've only got 4.
Only 4. Yes, hello everyone.
Yeah, so those of you that don't know Dalia, shame on you, but this is her website here, and she is, how can I put this delicately without insulting you, but at the same time complimenting you? Dalia is one of these people where we have our private MVP groups where we discuss various topics. And sometimes we have little chats and things like that about, I don't know, multi-threading or something like that. And Dalia is very, you have some strong opinions on some things. And I always like, yeah, go Dalia, because you're one of these people who go, no, you're completely wrong, and here's why. Is that true? Is that, or am I being unfair to you there?
Well, yes, you cannot have people being wrong on the internet. You have to correct them.
Yeah, I mean, I've known you for a few years now, and it was only, you've been a moderator for a year now, is that right? Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
A little more over a year.
Yeah, so whilst we're talking, I'm going to put Stack Overflow's link up here as well. I don't know if people wouldn't know Stack Overflow. I mean, to me, it's as a developer, it's one of those sites where really people should go to it. I mean, it's designed as a good quality question and answer site. And I think it's, one of the criticisms of Wikipedia, for example, is that Wikipedia is supposed to be a community encyclopedia. That's why it came around. The idea would be that you would throw enough people at it that the truth of a particular subject and the facts of a particular subject would bubble to the top. I think Stack Overflow takes a slightly different approach. Is that right? I mean, they actually moderate it to make sure the quality is good.
Yes, that is the primary purpose of moderation there, and quality control and voting and downvoting, as well as closing questions and removing content that is not of high quality, is that you have selected and curated content on which you can rely on. And this is one of the primary reasons of Stack Overflow success in the beginning, because of its moderation. And I don't know, at that point in time, there was nothing of sort. There was expert exchange, which was not free, but you have to jump through the hoops to get, or you have to pay something. I don't know. I never used it, so.
But yeah, I think it was free, but well, I don't know actually, because now you mention it, I don't hardly ever use it.
I don't remember, but I never used it.
It was a pain in the neck to register. I remember that much. Yeah.
Yes, you had to go through several levels of indirection to get to what you need. And one of the advantages of Stack Overflow is that its license is Creative Commons, so you free to use with attribution, and you could Google indexed it well, and you could go directly from Google search to you type some problem you're having, and you would usually land on Stack Overflow because you had the answers there. So most people would not use it directly. You wouldn't type Stack Overflow and go to their home page, but you would type something into Google, and you would find it in the search results, and you would land on answers, and which would help you.
And there's a reputation score as well, isn't there, for users? I think that if someone answers a question, you've got like a little reputation thing that basically says this person, take what they say with a pinch of salt because their reputation's like pretty low, whereas this person has got massive reputation, therefore they might not be right, but the chances are they are right. You know, I think that's
Yes, and another thing, I don't know why it happened, but it happened. It attracted experts from all areas. So you have every programmer was there at the time. Now maybe not that much. Some people left, or new people are coming. You have some influx of people, or you always have some people coming, some people leaving, and stuff like that. But you had experts in the area who participated there. You have people who are working and creating compilers and developing technology you were working with, who would answer your questions there. And with Embarcadero and Delphi, you had their people also there who would answer questions. You had Marco Cantu, you had Jim McKeith, you had Alan Bauer, Barry Kelly.
yeah.
So we
I
had,
mean, anybody. I mean, there were quite often people that worked on the compiler. You
yes,
know, like people that nobody ever knows exists because you know, Embarcadero were bald even kept them very much behind the scenes, and then they would go and answer questions. And a lot of people didn't realize that actually these guys, they didn't just work on the product, they were the product. What came
yes,
out of their head was the product. And when they answered a question, you were getting, you know, the genuine article answering the question for you. And
yes,
I
that is
mean,
very important.
yeah, and
To have,
I personally, I think that Stack Overflow is a very, very useful resource. I've had a few poor experiences with it, which we can talk about in a moment, but overall, I think it's essential, and I think it's like Wikipedia and PBS, you know, in the US, which are public TV libraries. You know, I'm a very big supporter of libraries. I have library books all around me. As you can see, I have books behind me as well. And as an author, of course, you think books are important. And I think the Stack Overflow is in that kind of level of importance. It's something that should exist. And I think that the fact it has existed has made my life better because I have often gone to Stack Overflow and there's an answer that has helped me out of a hole, you know, where I've been stuck on something. I've also answered the questions, not many, because you know life's too short. But but I have answered questions, but I don't think I've asked that many questions because I'm pretty good. So no, but Stack Overflow is good. But let me ask you this question because AI has actually had an impact on forums like Stack Overflow. Even Reddit is suffering some issues with AI as well. How is it? Do you feel, as someone that's obviously quite heavily involved with Stack Overflow as a moderator, you're there moderating questions. What has the impact of AI been on things like Stack Overflow, and where do you think it's going to go?
well,
Good direction, bad direction, or a little bit of both.
well, nobody can predict the future, but
Well,
there are few things that are happening. First, not as many questions are being asked right now. There is a steady decrease in the questions because people are now finding them easier with the AI, of course. And from the perspective of a power user or moderator or curator, expert, this is not a bad thing. Of course, it is a bad thing for Stack Overflow as a company because they are not getting the traffic they are used to. But from our perspective, from the perspective of library and maintaining that library of knowledge, it is easier to do that because you don't have that much questions asked which are not of high quality or which are repeated questions. We are closing those as duplicates.
I
So
think it's a problem, because I think that the trouble is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Chat GPT and various other LLMs were trained using Stack Overflow
yes,
questions.
they were
Well,
they were
can anybody see the problem there? Because if Stack Overflow eventually dies because nobody uses it, what's going to happen with the chat GPT? Because knowledge is not a static thing. You don't get to the point where there's this level of knowledge on Delphi, for example. It's an evolving language, but new, even if the language didn't come out with new language features and new things the IDE could do, people come up with new ways of doing old things. So what's going to happen then? The LLM is
Well,
creative. It's based
yes,
on
they LLMs cannot. There is no intelligence in the artificial intelligence as we know it, and the large
artificial
language
unintelligence.
models. Yes. So uh, there is a problem. There will be a problem if Stack Overflow or sites like that. This is not the only place. Stack Exchange has other sites, and one of the things that distinguishes Stack Overflow from some other places on the internet where you can find some knowledge, because it is a concentrated place where you have experts of all kinds. That is the first thing. And the next thing is that we don't allow AI content to be posted there, and we are
Right.
removing it heavily, all kinds of AI content. So you are not allowed to post fully generated content. You are not allowed to edit AI content and post it. You are not allowed to use it for translation, for wording your own content. So no AI of any kind is not is allowed there. So from that perspective, we are heavily moderating that part, and of course, people are not agreeing with this, but this is conscious decision. This is as it should be, because we are trying to protect that place and to leave it for the humans, for people, for the experts, so they can answer the questions and not some AI. Because if you let people post AI, we would drown in the flood of AI garbage. You cannot prevent that.
It's funny you said that, because there's a comment here by Andrew Spencer, who's been on a few of these things, which is, this was now, and I mean, I can't speak for what he's saying, whether it's true or not, but I assume he's correct. There was a news article I read that said original content becomes less, and the AI starts to train on AI generated content, which is exactly what you're saying. Is that, and I'll give you an example, a parallel to this, which is, for example, let's say you love sushi, and you really like tuna, and so you eat a lot of tuna sushi or sashimi, and so they keep fishing. And tuna take a long time to grow, to get to the size where they're edible. I mean, if they were that big, they'd be pointless. But like many fish out there, cod being another example, it's very popular, and we had to introduce quotas around the world so that people wouldn't eat all of the cod or eat all of the tuna. And the reason is that it's one of these feedback mechanisms. And now what you're talking about there is that the original content is the tuna or the codfish. The AI really loves to eat that. It is its staple food. But the problem is, just like overfishing, the AI is like the fisherman overfishing the original knowledge until you get to the point where now there's only artificial crab and artificial tuna and all these other things left. So the artificial news, artificial content becomes the original content, but it's feeding back on itself.
Yes, but one of the problems with such content, when LLMs are being trained on LLM content, on AI content, is that eventually the models collapse,
Yeah,
because they have no original content left
yeah.
to.
I mean, Milan is saying here, well, Stack Overflow is not the only fountain of knowledge. No, it's not. But the problem here is that the AIs are so immensely powerful in terms of them sucking in knowledge that it doesn't matter actually how many original sources of information you've got, unless that's constantly being renewed. If the AI replaces it or causes it to be no longer viable for Stack Overflow and anybody else to continue,
Yes.
where's
Well,
the content from?
we have a bigger problem, I think, with AI. It is not just the content that is being posted online and content on which AI can train, but for future generations, I mean, for today's learners and fresh developers, they are not learning properly. So have people are saying that AI will replace junior developers, but you need
Maybe
junior developers because those junior developers will grow to be a professional developers, to be
we
senior,
don't
to
want
be
everybody looking like me, Yeah,
and if you skip that step of being a junior developer, where when you are learning in a proper way, when you are solving problems on your own, when you are using your own brain, your own skills, and learning by doing simple stuff, then you will not have any sufficiently uh, trained developers in the future who will be able to replace those older developers who, of course, will age out and will not longer be working. So this is the problem for future generations. And
yeah. I mean, some people say, well, that's because developers will change to become prompt engineers, and so they will get better at telling the AI what it is they want to see. But the thing is, that's still a skill. You've
yes,
still
but
got to have someone who's got the
even,
experience of
even
looking
with
at
the
the program
skill,
and going, "This is what we want the program to do." You don't just learn that by going to college. You have to go off and understand what you want the AI to do at a level that is far more technical and complex than just looking at it from the outside.
yes,
It's like learning to bake a cake by looking through the windows of a cake shop. You can't do that. You've got to actually, understand what goes into it. Even if you're going to go and tell a junior baker how to make that cake, you
yes,
still need
yes.
to understand how to do that.
And we have a bigger problem because there is no intelligence in AI, and it doesn't create anything that it hasn't seen. Yes, it will, of course, it will generate something new. It isn't there's it will not just copy paste everything. You don't get exact output for inputs. But this is like having 1,000 monkeys typing on a keyboard. Yes, you might get a Shakespeare novel at one point, but there is no original thought there. There is nothing of substance, no progress, and nothing upon which you can build something. So this is
Yeah,
just reiterating old content, old stuff, all things that we already know. And it is great for the stuff which is we have in abundance. For instance, if you are a JavaScript developer, or you will think that it can do everything because it has been trained on so many data, and it can write almost anything you need in JavaScript. But especially if you are doing some common stuff. But for Delphi, or for some other languages, and even for some harder problems, you don't have that code. You don't have you can AI cannot solve the problems for you, so you have to do it. And if you lose the skill to learn and to understand the code and do things yourself, then you cannot solve the problems on your own. And on Stack Overflow, we are also seeing that many people are coming there with their problems. And one of the things they say is, uh, I have tried everything, I have tried AI, and I failed. It doesn't know how to solve my problem. So,
yeah. Or they don't know how to tell it to solve the problem as well, and
yes,
that's the other problem. Is that there's I don't know whether this works in your country, but in America there's a thing called the Rumsfeld paradox. Donald Rumsfeld was a controversial politician, but he had a very interesting thing, which he says there are known knowns, things we know. There are known unknowns, things we know we don't know. And then there are unknown unknowns, things we don't know. And this is the problem with AI, is there are things that you don't know. So if you are reasonably competent as a developer and you ask the AI something, you've got to know what it is you don't know, and you think the AI will know. And I know that sounds complicated, there's a lot of words "know" in there, but really what it boils down to is that you've actually got to understand a topic enough to be able to go to the AI and say, I want it to do this, this, and this. I need it to use TCP/IP or something like that, in the background. You can't just say to it, create me a web browser. It will create you a web browser, but it will do it in a way that is like every other single web browser out there. What it won't do is, put some special technology behind it, unless you know that's what you want to put in the web browser that you ask it to create. And by the way, Marco Shriek, interesting name, says how right Dalia is. He spelled your name wrong, but that's okay. It took me years to learn how to spell your name correctly. Nobody spells my name right in America, so there you go. But yeah, and I think this is a good point, because I want to call this out as well. I'm going to just put the Stack Overflow URL up here. It is literally stackoverflow.com, by the way, for those that don't know. But go there, and there is a survey running at the moment. If you're watching this webinar live, or maybe the day after it's live, you should go and fill that survey out, because there's a couple of interesting things about it. First of all, most of I'd say 3/4 of the questions on that survey are about AI. So obviously, whoever produced that survey, it's on their mind. Well, why wouldn't it be? It's the big topic. But Milan says, on the Stack Overflow survey, they asked what I thought would become the sought after skills in the next 5 years, and he answered liberal arts, creativity, and application domain expertise. And I think that's a very good point. Is that maybe the role of developer is evolving with the AI's evolution as well. Whether it comes to a good solution is another matter, but I think that is a fact. But on the Stack Overflow survey, by the way, it talks about rising technologies, and I nearly cried with happiness when I saw it, because it actually described RAD Studio as a rising technology. I don't know where it got that from, but I'm very glad it did.
I know how it got there.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
please don't tell me
Delphi 12 tag. It used the most used recently created tags, and this is Delphi 12. We tag questions with Delphi, and we also tag it with a version. So newly created tag, which has a lot of traffic, was Delphi 12. So
wow, I'm even more happy now. That's really great.
Yes. You have JavaScript, you have Java, you have Swift, you have
I've never heard of those languages.
everything else, but those are not new tags. So this is why they took it like it is a new technology. It is not new technology, but
it is one that's rising, and that's the important thing.
Yes, it is.
And I think the thing is as well that we get these people say Delphi's a dinosaur and all the rest of it. And I pointed out that in some of these surveys where you talk about the top 10 programming languages, 7 out of the 10 were actually older than Delphi. Delphi is not a new language, but it's actually JavaScript's older. Python is older, and C++ and all the rest of it. They're all older than Delphi. I don't know why they think of us as a dinosaur. It's just prejudice as much as anything, but there you go.
Yes.
AT says,
when they say that Java is newer than Delphi, and it was...
do you know what you're talking about?
Yes.
So if you're watching, people, go to stackoverflow.com or scan this QR code. Fill out the survey, please, because especially if you use Delphi, say you use Delphi, because it helps us by making sure that people realize that Delphi is in use. It's not. It's so frustrating because I meet tens of thousands of people, around the world, and I get hundreds of emails every day from people using Delphi, and it's used in airports, it's used on TV advertising, it's used absolutely everywhere, and you don't know it. Most people watching this webinar, I'm going to look directly down the camera. Nearly all of you watching this webinar right now with myself and Dalia, nearly every single one of you has probably interacted and not known it with the Delphi program today. That is almost a fact. You probably didn't realize it, but Delphi has touched your life. Banking, a bus timetable, train timetable, overhead announcements at a railway station, even the planning of traffic lights and stuff like that. There are Delphi programs out there that are doing that, and they're used everywhere. The space European Space Agency, ESA, they use Delphi. Nuclear power stations, I know some of those use Delphi. It's absolutely everywhere. It just doesn't go wrong enough for people to notice. We all know when there's a .NET program because there's a bloody great big error message comes up, goes, sorry, your program's crashed. But Delphi doesn't do that. So I mean, it does. I'm not
Yes,
going to
it crashes, but
perfect.
it doesn't tell you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it does go wrong, but you
Yeah.
can write bad programs in any language, but it's harder in a good language. So AT says big bosses think that AI can write any code from existing code blocks, like composing any music using 7 notes and 12 octaves.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
not really. Yes, that is a problem because people think that AI uh, can write code and can read documents. It can summarize it for you. It can write your letters. It can communicate instead of you. But there is a problem with that because it will write things wrong pretty much all the time. So
yeah,
when you're coding, the best thing it can happen that the code you get it won't compile. But the greatest problem is when it compiles, but you have some bad code in it, and you have to consider about security implications, and even you can go bankrupt because of it. There was a guy who wipe coded some Firebase application, something like that. And Google delivered about $120,000 bill for it over two matter of days because he had some bugs in the code and the guy was not a programmer at all. So he just took the pieces from what AI gave him. Of course, you can do errors like this and mistakes like that even if you are a developer. You can do it on your own. You don't need
yeah,
AI to write bad code, and you don't need AI to copy paste some bad answer on Stack Overflow and or some other source. But the AI makes those things easier, so you can more easily shoot yourself in the foot with AI.
yeah. And that's a fact. And I tell you something else as well, which is one thing I have said before, which is if you have a junior programmer, they're just fresh out of college or maybe even out of school or something, but they're new and they're shiny and new, and they're new because you can tell, and they come along and they start writing code, and you give them a diagram or a bunch of notes or something like that, and say, "Oh, produce me this," and they check their coding, and you look at the code, and you're like, oh, because straight away you can see they've made this mistake and that mistake, and their code is naive. And I know this sounds a bit elitist to say that, but that's one of the signs of a senior developer, is that the code is not quite as clunky, chunky. Senior developers have got slightly more refined ways of writing code, not because they're better, they've just been doing it for longer. It's like someone throwing a knife at a wall. If they practice it long enough, they do a very good job of it. Whereas the first time you do it, it bounces off or something. And it's the same with code, you know. So the junior developers, you look at them like, oh dear, he's done this, he's formatted it in a weird way, or she's done that and formatted this and but the problem with AI is it's plausible when you see it because
Yeah.
it's copied the style of someone that did know what they're doing. It hallucinates quite often some functions for Delphi that don't even exist.
Yes.
And so you're looking through the code, and when it hallucinates, that's good because you can spot that error because it comes up and says there's no such error called, I don't know, console.log or something because it's stolen it from JavaScript and got it completely wrong. But when it doesn't do that and the code compiles, as you said, the danger there is that, oh, zero errors, zero warnings, great, it's good code. But we all know as
No,
long time
it's not a
developers
good
that
code.
that's when you really fool yourself. you know.
Yes, and another problem with explaining code or with writing documentation or writing summaries or similar things is that AI will hallucinate even there. So it can explain something and it will look plausible if you're not an expert. And this is one thing I repeat often. If you are the expert and you know what is correct and incorrect answer, then you can write the answer yourself. You don't need AI to write an answer for you on Stack Overflow or wherever you are doing something. But if you don't know the answer to some question or you don't know how to solve some problem, then you will not be able you will not have the knowledge and you will not be able to recognize mistakes in what AI gave you. Uh, and you will not be able to recognize mistakes in explanations. So you might learn something, you might think that something works in a way that it doesn't work. And this is a problem for everyone. Of course, there are bigger and smaller problems with it, but this is a problem. And today's generations of developers and people, not just developers, it will be a problem all across board in different for different people and different jobs and because people will learn things that are not true
Yeah,
because AI will tell them that. And there was at some point, I don't know, it was about 2 years ago or something like that, Mozilla Developer Network started doing AI summaries of their documents, and they were wrong, very much wrong. So
yeah,
people will go there for some explanation or some code, some instructions, and they would read the AI summary because it was shorter than reading the detailed document, and that summary was wrong.
yeah,
And that created problems, and of course they removed AI after that. But
yeah. Someone was it was a customer that wrote to me and was saying that they for .NET they're multi uh, discipline software house. So they have .NET people, they have Delphi people, they have Python people, and he was telling me, um, oh yeah, we have our .NET guys are using AI to generate code, and they're 10 times more productive. And then he said we produce 100 times more code. I think that's what he said. I can't remember, but anyway, it was some extravagant figure. He was trying to convince me that there was a good reason why, and I was kind of skeptical. So he was really trying to push the boat out and say, hey, it's more effective to use AI. But the trouble with that is that if you suddenly producing 10 times the amount of code, you've now got 10 times the problem to check that code. Now tomorrow we do have Der Scanner here who do actually have automated testing and scanning. They do vulnerability scanning. And actually, the video tomorrow by Valerie shows some AI involved in that, which actually is quite effective. It does find some problems in code that perhaps I wouldn't have spotted, even with unit tests and things like that. But I don't know. If you suddenly make 5 people able to do the work of 50, you still need 50 people to check the work of the
Yeah,
50 imaginary people. There's or a very good system that checks it. And as you said, if what it checks looks right but isn't,
yes,
then you've got another problem. You just AI will improve. I'm sure it will get better, and it will get better at producing better results. But we've still got the fundamental problem of it not being creative, or needing someone to guide it. And then once it's guided you, into making an app, they've still got to have some way of reviewing it. And if that requires AI to do that, then you've got AI checking the output of AI. And again, can nobody else see the problem there? It's like a feedback loop. So it's like getting a student to write some code and giving it to another student to check it. I mean, nobody would think that was a good idea. You're going to want the senior developer to check it and make sure. I don't know.
yeah. When you write your code, you know that code. You know why you wrote each line of that code. You understand it. Okay, maybe junior developers, when they copy something from somewhere, will not, but they will learn in time. So
Yeah,
you understand the code you're writing, and this is not a matter of being able to read that code, being nice code or not nice. Delphi is rather readable code and easily readable. So you can write nice code, but you can write nice code in other languages too. But that is not a problem. The problem is that the code you didn't write, even if you can read it and understand it, you need more time to understanding than the code you wrote yourself. So when you have to check some code that somebody else wrote or AI wrote, you will spend more time understanding, or you will do it very superficially. So, okay, this looks good, it compiles, it runs, it looks like it is working, but you may have problems with that code. And you will never know whether this code is good or not. Of course, you can test that code, but there is another problem. You will have AI writing tests, and it is rather good with that part. So you can devise test cases. You can help yourself in that area, especially if you don't have a lot of tests written. You can help make your code covered with tests better with help of AI,
I
because
think AI is very good. I mean, I think what we're both saying is a similar thing, which is um, AI has got the potential to be very useful as a helper, and very useful
yes,
for speeding up processes and for helping maybe increase efficiency. But you shouldn't blindly rely on it and think it's the answer to all your problems,
yes,
and
yes.
that you can just get someone who doesn't know what they're doing suddenly to become magically a programmer, even though really they're actually, you know, they
No,
clean cars
you
or
still
something.
have
They've
to
never
pay
touched a program
attention.
in their life.
Yeah, you still have to pay attention to everything AI does. So you can. I have written some tests for my code with AI, and it works well.
Yeah,
But about half of the tests are not useful because they were set up wrong. They have
yeah.
wrong expectations, so they fail when they shouldn't, or they pass when they shouldn't. So there are problems. But I've solved some bugs with the help of AI in some code, some old code which was not tested, and for rather simple things. But the problem is, even with that with when it helps you, you have to be careful and make sure that you covered all your bases. So it will write you 5 tests, but maybe you need 10 to cover that code. So you will still have loopholes there, but you will have a false sense of security. You'll think, okay, I have covered that code. Of course, you can always run some code coverage and see whether the code is covered with tests and similar things. But the code coverage alone is not enough to know that your code is properly functioning.
Yeah.
So,
And again, this is down to experience that maybe AI doesn't. I mean, there's going to be that kind of problem domain, as they call it, to use jargon, where AI is not going to be very good at. And I want to take a slightly different tangent here, because you've written, as we said at the start, 4 books, and you're a very good author, by the way. In fact, I have a couple of your books behind me, I think, and I think I get ebooks as well. But and as you may or may not know, I'm a voice actor, so I've done voiceovers on books and things like that, and recorded them for Audible and a few other things as well. And I stopped doing that mainly because it's very time consuming. For every hour of audio that you record, it's 4 hours of effort, because you have to record the audio, you maybe stumble over a word, or you completely mispronounce something. Or I remember one author, he wrote about mochi, which is a Japanese kind of ice creamy sort of thing. It's actually paste that's pounded. It's chew. I don't like it myself, but I'd never eaten it, and I'd never seen the word written down. But it's Mochi, so it looks like mochi. And I just read it and said, "Oh, mochi," and it made me re-record it 5 times. It kept sending me a pronunciation guide, and I never got it right until the very end. And then, but that's the voice of that's the problem of a audio narrator, is that you have to deal with weird pronunciation. But as an author as well, because I've written a few books and poetry books and a few other things, I stopped doing it partially because of the time required to do the audio, but also because there was a big rise in AI created books, and you could tell almost that, because this was a couple of years ago, you could tell straight away it was terrible. Someone had obviously given an outline to the book and said, create me a book about a dragon and a child that flies or something. And that's what it does. It creates a children's book. And it was credible. I mean, the English was correct, but it was boring as hell. And, you're like reading it through and you're like, no, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
Because I used to do, kids' books and voices and things like that. But now when I go back and look at the Audible catalog, and also the marketplaces for people like me who do those voiceovers, it's full of books that are very low quality, but a lot of content there, and it is all quite obviously AI generated. Does that concern you as an author? Do you think that's going to be
No, because like with the answers on Stack Overflow, people will learn, people know how to recognize AI. Not everyone is that good in recognizing it. This depends on the person, but people recognize AI, and at some point you don't trust things that were written with AI. So I'm doing it all the time. Okay, this is influenced with me being a Stack Overflow moderator, so I have deleted thousands and thousands of AI answers. And
wow?
when I land on something that is written, when I recognize AI, my brain just shuts off and I stop reading it because it is not worth my time reading it.
Yeah.
This is an automatic reaction because I'm moderating such a huge amounts of content. But
I
yes,
mean,
this is
that
the
is a problem
problem.
for moderators as well, isn't it?
Yes, this is the problem for people who are using AI to write something. Even if they have expertise, even if they have written something themselves and they just use it for formatting or rewording, rephrasing, or something like that, they lose their authenticity and their own voice, and they they will be recognized as AI authors, and not as humans. So this is the problem for people, for everyone who is thinking about writing something. They should do it on their own and not use AI for that. because this is a problem, because people are recognizing it, and they are not trusting the content that is written by AI. And this is not just that experts are not trusting such content. You have beginners who recognize when something is written by AI, and they don't want to read it.
Yeah,
I mean,
in fact, I'm trying
this
to
is
find an
not.
article I read, which I can't find now because I saved all the Pocket, which was a really great utility that you used to be able to save articles. They closed down. I use Instapaper now, which is really good. But I've been saving stuff about AI in preparation for this week. Where is it now? There was an article where it was saying that some school had got a massive increase in students cheating with using AI, and that it actually had got to the point where the school just couldn't cope because there were so many kids that are just going, I'll use ChatGPT to answer my homework question.
Yes.
And you know, I assume that the school is, as AI gets better, you know, the large language models get better at English and become more subtle in the answers that they give, that people like yourself as moderators and people in the school who are moderating I wish I could find the article because it was a really fascinating article, but it's going to get harder because if ChatGPT does improve to the point where it's almost impossible to spot the AI, is that a
Well,
good?
it is
Does that
easier to spot it
mean
than you think. It is easier to spot it than you think, and
right?
I have dealt with some harder cases on Stack Overflow, and you can always spot it. You can see it. So teachers, of course, if teacher is not good at recognizing an AI, then they will have a problem. But you can recognize the AI pretty good. Even if it gets better, it still has patterns which you can recognize, so you cannot avoid that
Yeah.
completely.
I mean, I wish I could find that article. It's going to bug me now. You bet. I guarantee the minute we stop broadcasting, I'll find it straight away. But yeah. I mean, I think this is the thing that the problem with teachers is that most teachers I know in the United States, I don't know whether it's true in other countries, but you know, in the United States, just one second. See, that's how you know I'm not an AI robot because the AI robot would never choke on their own words. But yeah, most school teachers I know have got very little time, and they in the United States they tend to do the marking of homework after school in the evening, sitting in front of the TV or in the kitchen or so in their own time. And I don't know how they factor the pay in or whether they get paid for that time, but they don't have a lot of time to look through the kids' work, and if it's a long essay, to go, yes, this is AI or not, unless it's quite obvious. And you know, they always used to be able to spot kids that had copied each other because the brain is very good at recognizing patterns. So when you read through one article that's written by a kid who you know is not smart, should we say? Let's be polite. And you think, come on, this kid can barely spell his name, and yet he's written a very good article about, I don't know, chemistry or something. And then you spot the smart kid in the class who has written a very similar article. You think they copied off each other. But with
Yeah.
AI, yeah, unless it makes, I mean, as a poet, a published poet, when the AI first came out, everybody started getting it to write nursery rhymes and kids, uh, poems for people's birthdays and weddings, and all of the AI made very similar mistakes on certain lines of the poems, and I'll be like, "That's an AI. Someone's used AI for that." And it was the same thing. It was just experience of. I read a lot of poetry. I used to go into schools and teach it in Nebraska and things like that. So I've seen a lot of people write poetry, and so when I see an AI poem, Some of them, yeah, they're difficult. You're not quite sure, but some of them it was just obvious
Yes,
that it was
it is
AI.
recognizable. And well, on one hand, this is a problem for people who use it for translating things. This is one thing where AI is really good. It is in translations. So when people use it for translations, and this is a place where it really helps. It can help. It is so good in those translations comparing to Google Translate. We were all joking about how bad Google Translate is
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes. But with AI, it is really good at translations. And this is rather hard for me when I have to delete something which is possibly only translated by someone who doesn't know English.
Not
But
allowed.
I
Yeah,
have to delete it anyway because it is recognized. I recognize it as AI, and we have no exceptions for
yeah,
this. But so in one way, it is allowing communication between people, which was impossible before. But on the other hand, it also creates problem for those people. First, they start to rely on AI translations more than they are writing or reading on their own. So again, their own skills are suffering for that. So it is always better to use it just as much as you need, if you really need it in some
yeah.
places, but that you continue practicing and continue developing your own skills regardless of what skills those are,
One, one,
because
one of one of
just
our MP.
which can
Sorry,
help
carry
you,
on.
but you shouldn't rely on it too much because you will lose your own skill set, or you will never learn something new.
Yeah. And actually, I can say that's a fact because I learned French by ear. I got taught it at school, but I forgot it all. You know, as the minute I left school, that was it. My French went out of my head. But I used to. I've had a weird life, and at one point I used to look after a French grandmother. It wasn't my grandmother; it was somebody else's grandmother. But that's how they used to refer to the French grandmother. And she had dementia, so she didn't know she lived in England, and so she only spoke French. So when I was looking after her as a carer, helping out, uh, um, I used to have to speak French to her, and so my French improved immensely because she doesn't speak any English, and so every day I was speaking French to her, saying, you know, it's time for your medicine and things like that. And once you stopped speaking French every day, because she passed away eventually, she was 97, so you know it wasn't a surprise. But once she died, um, I wasn't, you know, having to speak French every day. And now, 30 years later, I hardly ever speak French to anybody. So it's completely gone out of my head. And it's the
Yes,
same thing with coding. You know, if you don't do it every single day, then you start to get rusty until eventually you're not as good as you were 10 years ago. It's a weird thing, but, you know, it's like riding a bicycle. Yeah, you never forget how to ride a bicycle, but you get better at it if you do it every day.
yes. This
Yeah,
is like this with every skill you have. For instance, I'm not using English in writing every day, so I'm very good in writing. But when I have to speak, it is a bit harder. Not
I
that much, but
feel your pain.
I don't have that much practice in speaking.
Of
Uh,
course, yeah.
if I do it every day, then I would improve in speaking
You,
also. But
you, I mean, you speak excellent English anyway. You always do, and more importantly, your comprehension is very good, which is even
yes,
better.
because I think in English basically when it
Yeah,
comes to developing,
my
and
stepfather, he passed away. He's dead now, but he was Polish, and and he lived in England from 1943, I think, because of the Second World War. And he lived in England all his life, and he still had a very strong Polish accent. It was hilarious, but Cockney Polish accent, you know, London. So it was a weird accent. But I once asked, whenever he spoke on the phone to back to people in Poland, they used to laugh because when he spoke Polish, his Polish had stopped in 1943. He still spoke Polish to his brothers who came into England, but everybody he knew, his family, my mother, who was his wife, me as his stepson and my sister, who was his stepdaughter, we're all English, so he spoke English every day. And but when he spoke on the phone, they're going, come and listen to Grandpa because he speaks old-fashioned Polish, like from the 1940s, because the language evolved. But I asked him once, what language do you think in? And he said, when he went to sleep and dreams, he dreams in English.
Well, yes,
Uh,
I'm living in English basically all day, so I
isn't
have
it
a
weird?
problem when I have to uh, talk in Croatian, in my native language, about development. I don't know how to how to phrase myself. I don't know words which I have to use, so
I had
I'm
the
using
weirdest,
English all
I
the
had the
time.
weirdest experience a while ago.
Um,
Obviously, I live in the United States. I live in Dallas, in Texas, and everybody around me is American. My ex-wife is American. My daughter's American, and I don't really ever see any other Brits. And I was talking to someone, I think at the Delphi Summit in Amsterdam, and we were talking about something to do with Delphi, and I said to them, I can't remember the British word for it. It was just the stupidest thing. But it's English, obviously, but there's a very subtle difference, and I couldn't think of what the British people say for this particular word. I only knew the American word for it. It's the weirdest thing, but it is. Yeah, I totally get how. Yeah, it must be a struggle sometimes. Just how do I say that in Croatian again?
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And
Well,
my kids are like that. They're also very fluent in
yeah.
English, and we
I
speak
think the
English
world.
half the time at home. So
I think AI and the internet and all those things have brought us together in a good way. It's made the world smaller. In some ways, it's bad. Facebook, I think, is a particular example of some really unpleasant people who just you didn't know they were horrible until uh, you know um, until you heard them talk about something on Facebook. You're like, oh my gosh, that person's a racist, and you never knew because you were only ever meeting them at I don't know, school concert or something, and then Facebook allowed you to see the unfiltered opinions that they had, and it wasn't one that you necessarily agreed with yourself. But it also means that you and I, for example, can be friends and talk about Delphi programming like that remotely. And it is, most people when I meet another developer at the Delphi Summit, some of these people like Frank Lauter, I see him quite often now, but I'd known him for years, and yet we felt like we knew each other like good friends because of the
yes,
internet. So it's a good thing, but I think that but also, there's some caution. And I want to point out as well, by the way, Dalia's website here to you watching, you really should go there if you're interested in Delphi. Dalia writes some really quite incredible books. They're not, some of them, I think it's safe to say, are not for beginners. I think that's not an unfair thing to say. That the one on thread safety, for example, all of the MVPs, there's some very smart MVPs in the MVP group. All of us look towards your books with absolute respect. And really, we don't always agree with everything everybody says,
of
but
course.
that's what makes us an MVP. We're like, no, this is a wrong idea. Like 3-0, never ever mention that to Nick Hodges because you will just never hear the last of it. And I know you have opinions as well. Don't go there. Let's not talk about that. But your books on thread safety and stuff like that are books that really people should, if they're interested in Delphi properly and understanding some real mechanics behind it. That's what we will lose, if AI is the only thing that's allowed. It can come up with some suggestions and stuff like that. But I know the amount of effort that you must have put into writing those books in the first place, coming up with the ideas, researching the topics, you must have spent a lifetime. I'm amazed you're still married because because yeah, I did. Doesn't your husband edit them or something? I forget. He's involved in
No, my son, my
son.
son.
That's it. I knew it was one of them. That's how you keep them involved. You see, he's like, come and edit the book.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of effort, and I know that those books they're not a small undertaking. I'm a professional editor. I edit other people's books, and I know the effort that goes into writing books. So I think if AI pushed people like you aside and people started believing the hype of AI instead of trusting humans, we're fallible. Humans are broken by default, and that's what makes us interesting. If every single person looked exactly the same, acted exactly the same, spoke the same way, and ate the same food, I think the world would be awful. And
Yeah.
and that's the thing that worries me. I don't want AI to be going in that direction.
Well,
Uh,
I hope not. Well,
yeah,
when you are writing something, you have to understand what you are writing about, and you have to go deep into the topic, and you have to understand the mechanism behind, which is something that AI will not always be able to. It will not be able to connect the dots and make the connection when exploring some things. It will know, it will learn from somewhere, and it can recognize some patterns in code, and it can explain what that code does and what it should do, but it will not be able to go deep down and go in behind the scenes,
yeah.
deep
Maybe it
in
will
the
in the
code
future.
and
But maybe,
understand.
maybe it will. But right now, I'm not so sure it will. I
Well,
think,
I'm not so sure in the future either,
yeah,
because it has its limits.
yeah,
And there was a few days ago, Apple published a paper which is called Illusion of Thinking. Uh,
yes. I read that paper. Very
in
interesting.
that paper, they are discussing how large language models and large reasoning models, which are newer things, where they are capable, those large reasoning models are capable of thinking in
They don't reason or rationale. They
yes,
just
they are
regurgitate.
not reasoning, but
Yeah,
they are improvement over the large language models, which are just basically doing some
yeah,
statistics based token generation. So all those models collapse at a certain point of complexity, so they can solve easy problems. And one thing is interesting, that large language models can solve simple problems better than reasoning models. So the model that should be able to do logical reasoning is doing worse than the model that is just supposed to be a chatbot. So this is interesting thing, but they all fail at certain point of complexity. So reasoning models like I think O1 and O3 or ChatGPT, they can solve some problems that large language models alone cannot solve, some medium complexity. But
yeah.
when they have to deal with some really hard problems, they fall apart. So I
Yeah.
don't think this will, yes, they will improve, certainly. But I think there is a certain point after which they will not be able to improve anymore, or not sufficiently. So I don't think we will have uh,
I think
general
OpenAI.
intelligence as we know it, because intelligence is not just putting words on one place, putting some knowledge, and calling that intelligence. We are starting humans. We are starting as blank slates. We are as kids, but we have a mechanism in our brains. Uh, our intelligence is something we are born with, and we are just filling that with the knowledge later on. But without that basic operational model, we have that intelligence built in, and large language models and reasoning models and the AI intelligence, they don't have that base operational intelligence. They don't have a model which can learn on its own. And of course, we can say this part will also develop in the future, but we still don't know how we are functioning, and this is more complicated than it looks.
I'll give you an example of that. Back in the days when we used to have big TVs, not flat screen, but the old-fashioned ones, and it used to be, I don't know whether it was true for you, but in the 1970s, for example, if the TV picture was not working properly, people would go up and they'd bang the top of the TV, and quite often it would fix the picture. It would just fix the problem, and you'd be like, oh no, and they're back, and it's not good to bang it because it's an electrical, it's a delicate, but you bang the top of the TV and it would fix the picture, and you'd say, oh, what did you do? So, I don't know. If you bang the top of it though, it fixes the TV. So the large language model goes, that fixes problems with the picture, so you should bang the top of the TV. But the electrical engineer knows that the reason it works is there's something that is either not connected properly. So when the TV warms up, the socket where the chip is soldered comes apart because it heats up. And when you bang it, it makes it touch and make contact again. And that's why the picture was resolved. Now, if it has never consumed the knowledge of the electrical engineer that goes, it's this, I've tested these and there's a fault, then it won't know. But not only that, if the electrical engineer is dumb and doesn't know this, and they go to the TV and they don't turn it on, they just test it with the test equipment, but the TV's cold, the socket hasn't expanded enough for it to stop making contact. And he goes, there's nothing wrong with it, your TV is fine, because I've tested it. And this is where we're at with large language models. It's not thinking, it's not going, well, how can it work? How can it be fixed by banging the top of the television? It just goes, that fixes it. And when it doesn't fix it, give it to a guy who will test it. And that's right. And by the way, because we're nearly out of time, but Helios says, I'm about to go for retirement, so now I will have time to do Delphi programming all day. Good job. That's and to read all of Dalia's books and introduce them in my programs. Well, a challenge accepted, because she's a very prolific author. There's 4 of them for a start, and they're kind of chunky books as well, but they are excellent books. Go to there or go to delphibooks.com. He lists them on there as well, but Dalia's books. And then someone else, Milan, says, this has been very, really interesting and enlightening journey. Lots of things we don't know, but are on fast track for discovering. Yes, I think it's an exciting time to be alive. I think that there is potential here for some great things to come out of it. But as a skeptic, I also think there's great potential for some bad things to come out of it. Don't trust everything you read. Don't question. Be scientific about it. Question what you see and be skeptical, but also embrace the positive things, because there are some very good things that come out. Neither you or I are saying it's a bad thing. We're just saying be careful.
Yes, you have to be very careful about it.
Like eating
You have to
donuts.
think what you're doing.
If you only ever eat donuts, you're going to probably die quite quickly. Yeah, and Milan says, thanks to Dalia for customary high-quality observations. There you go. Yeah, okay. All right, well, thanks a lot, Dalia. We'll call it a day, I think, and just once again, go to her website. But Dalia, she's the Stack Overflow moderator, which means sometimes she's nice to you and sometimes she kills your answer because it's terrible. But either way, it's a good thing.
Well, whatever you do, don't post AI on Stack Overflow.
Oh, yes, don't post AI. This is the one takeaway from this. Dalia will get you. She'll smite you with the moderator's hand of smiting. So there you go. Like it's a good thing. But it's all for a good purpose, and that is the quality of Stack Overflow. We all know if you want the answer, go to Stack Overflow. You probably, don't ask dumb questions. Learn to ask good questions. That's my top tip. Because if you ask a stupid
you can ask simple questions, but they have to be well written. When I say well written, you don't have to know English well, but you need to present your problem well. You have to explain what is your problem, and then even a simple question will be fine.
Yeah. Zero trust in networking is extremely popular now, says AT. We should implement zero trust rules for AI as well. Yeah, I get it. So trust but verify is probably another way of looking at it. You know, look at it, ask it the right questions, and then go from there. But yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Dalia, and I'll see you
Thank you,
another time.
everyone.
Thank you, and I will
Good night.
see you another time. Bye bye.
Bye.